The next sutta is 8.1.6. The Buddha said, "Monks, these 8 worldly conditions obsess the world. The world revolves round these 8 worldly conditions." What 8? Gain and loss, fame and dishonor, praise and blame, happiness and suffering. Monks, these 8 worldly conditions obsess the world, and the world revolves around these 8 worldly conditions. I'll just stop here for a moment. These 8 conditions are worldly states, worldly conditions, loka dhamma. And Chinese, they are, in the Chinese Buddhism, they are called the 8 winds. 8 winds which move a person, which shake a person. And then the Buddha continued, "Monks, to the unlearned, common average folk come gain, loss, fame, dishonor, praise, blame, happiness, suffering. To the learned Aryan disciple also come gain, loss, and so forth. Here then, monks, what is the distinction, what is the peculiarity of, and what is the difference between the Aryan disciple and the common average folk? Lord, our doctrines have their foundation in the Exalted One. They are guided by the Exalted One. They have the Exalted One's protection. Well indeed were it for us if the Exalted One would expound the meaning of his speech to us. Then when the monks have heard the Exalted One, they will treasure his words in their hearts." And the Buddha said, "Then listen, monks, give heed, I will speak." "Yes, Lord," they replied. And the Exalted One said, "Monks, gain comes to the unlearned common average folk who reflect not thus. This gain which has come is impermanent, painful, and subject to change. They know it not as it really is. Similarly, loss comes, fame, dishonor, praise, blame, happiness, suffering. They reflect not that such are impermanent, painful, and subject to change. Nor do they know these conditions as they really are. Gain, loss, and so forth take possession of their minds and hold sway there. They welcome the gain which has arisen. They rebel against loss. They welcome the fame which has arisen. They rebel against dishonor. They welcome the praise which has arisen. They rebel against blame. They welcome happiness which has arisen. They rebel against suffering. Thus given over to compliance and hostility, they are not freed from being born, aging, dying, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. I say such folk are not free from ill. But to the learned Aryan disciple, just the converse is the case." And that's the end of the sutta. So here, these 8 conditions, they all come to us. We all experience them. But an ordinary person, when he experiences these things, he is moved by them. When what he considers is good, like gain comes, he is very happy. But when loss comes, he is very sad. And these things, gain, loss, etc., take possession of his mind and moves his mind very much. He's moved very much by likes and dislikes. And so because of that, you find this person, most people, ordinary people, they have this monkey mind, which is always happy and sad and excited most of the time. And the only way to overcome this like and dislike is mentioned in the Sakkapanha Sutta in the Digha Nikaya, where Sakka Devaraja asked the Buddha, "What is the cause of people quarreling and fighting in this world?" And the Buddha said, "Greed and jealousy." And then Sakka Devaraja asked, "What is the cause of greed and jealousy?" And the Buddha said, I think like and dislike, I think. And the cause of like and dislike is desire, and the cause of desire is thinking, and the cause of thinking is proliferation of thoughts, and how to stop the proliferation of thoughts. And then the Buddha said, there's 2 types of happiness. One type of happiness is the happiness of thinking. Another type of happiness is the happiness that comes from not thinking. And the happiness that comes from not thinking is the happiness that comes from jhana, jhanic bliss, when a person's attains the second jhana upwards, the mind stops thinking, and that kind of happiness is superior to the normal happiness that comes from thinking. People get a lot of happiness from thinking. That's why some people like to daydream. They like to fantasize. They like to imagine. And there's only a type of happiness which is higher than this, which is jhanic bliss. And so the way to overcome these likes and dislikes is to attain the bliss of jhana, so that then we can overcome the likes and dislikes.
22.7 at Savatthi. Monks, I will teach you agitation through clinging and non-agitation through non-clinging. Listen to that and attend closely. I will speak. Yes, my good sir, those monks replied. The Blessed One said, and how, monks, is there agitation through clinging? Here, monks, the unlearned ordinary person who does not see Aryas, noble ones, is unskilled and untrained in the Dhamma, who does not see superior persons and is unskilled and untrained in the Dhamma, regards body as self, or self as possessing body, or body as in the self, or self as in the body. That body of his changes and alters. With the change and alteration of body, his consciousness becomes preoccupied with the change of body. Agitation and a constellation of mental states born of preoccupation with the change of body remain obsessing his mind. Because his mind is obsessed, he is frightened, distressed and anxious, and through clinging he becomes agitated. Similarly, with feeling, perception, volition and consciousness, all these change, and then he becomes agitated, and all the different mental states arise out of his preoccupation with the change. So he becomes frightened, distressed, etc. It is in such a way, monks, that there is agitation through clinging. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is saying that the ordinary, unlearned person, he attaches to body, feeling, perception, volition as self, or as belonging to self, or self is in the aggregates, or the aggregates are in the self. But then when the aggregates change, because it is their nature to change, then he becomes mentally occupied with this change. That means he becomes agitated and he thinks about it. When he thinks about it, the mind proliferates, all his worries multiply. Then he becomes more agitated, so he becomes frightened, distressed and all that. This is how there is agitation because of clinging. And how, monks, is there non-agitation to non-clinging? Here, monks, the learned noble disciple who sees noble ones and is skilled and trained in the Dhamma, who sees superior persons and is skilled and trained in the Dhamma, does not regard body as self, or self as possessing body, or body as in the self, or self as in that body. Then that body of his changes and alters. Despite the change and alteration of body, his consciousness does not become preoccupied with the change of form. I mean, he's not worried, he's not agitated. No agitation and constellation of mental states born of preoccupation with the change of body remain obsessing his mind. Because his mind is not obsessed, he is not frightened, distressed or anxious, and through non-clinging he does not become agitated. Similarly, for feeling, perception, volition and consciousness. This in such a way, monks, that there is non-agitation through non-clinging. So in the second case, the person, the Aryan disciple who is learned in the Aryan Dhamma, who is trained in the Aryan Dhamma, he does not regard the five aggregates as the self, or as belonging to self, or the aggregates being in the self, or the self as being in the aggregates. So when the five aggregates change, because it is their nature to change, then he does not worry about it. Because he is not worried about it, he does not become agitated and obsessed with all these thoughts. Then He's not frightened, not distressed. That is how there is no agitation because of non-clinging. So it is the clinging that gives us suffering. If there's no clinging, there is no suffering. 36.6, Buddha said, monks, the unlearned ordinary worldling feels a pleasant feeling, a painful feeling, and a neither painful nor pleasant feeling. The learned noble disciple also feels a pleasant feeling, a painful feeling, and a neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Therein, monks, what is the distinction, the disparity, the difference between the learned noble disciple and the unlearned ordinary worldling? And the monk said, Venerable Sir, our teachings are rooted in the Blessed One, guided by the Blessed One, take recourse in the Blessed One. It would be good if the Blessed One would clear up the meaning of this statement. Having heard it from him, the monks will remember it. Then listen and attend closely, monks, I will speak. Yes, Venerable Sir, the monks replied. Monks, when the unlearned ordinary worldling is being contacted by a painful feeling, he sorrows, grieves and laments. He weeps, beating his breast, and becomes distraught. He feels two feelings, a bodily one and a mental one. Suppose they were to strike a man with a dart, then they would strike him immediately afterwards with a second dart, so that the man would feel a feeling caused by two darts. So too, when the unlearned ordinary worldling is being contacted by a painful feeling, he sorrows, grieves and laments, he weeps, beating his breast, and becomes distraught. He feels two feelings, a bodily one and a mental one. Being contacted by the same painful feeling, he harbors aversion towards it. When he harbors aversion towards painful feeling, the underlying tendency to aversion towards painful feeling lies behind this. Being contacted by painful feeling, he seeks delight in sensual pleasure. For what reason? Because the unlearned ordinary worldling does not know of any escape from painful feeling other than sensual pleasure. When he seeks delight in sensual pleasure, the underlying tendency to lust for pleasant feeling lies behind this. He does not understand as it really is the origin and the passing away, the gratification, danger and escape in the case of these feelings. When he does not understand these things, the underlying tendency to ignorance in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feeling lies behind this. When he feels a pleasant feeling, he feels it attached. If he feels a painful feeling, he feels it attached. If he feels a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he feels it attached. This monk is called an unlearned ordinary worldling, who is attached to birth, aging and death, who is attached to sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair, who is attached to suffering, I say. Monks, when the learned noble disciple is contacted by a painful feeling, he does not sorrow, grieve or lament. He does not beat his breast and become distraught. He feels one feeling, a bodily one, not a mental one. Suppose they were to strike a man with a dart, but they would not strike him immediately afterwards with a second dart, so that the man would feel a feeling caused by one dart only. So too, when the learned noble disciple is contacted by a painful feeling, he does not sorrow, grieve or lament. He does not weep, beating his breast and become distraught. He feels one feeling, bodily one, not a mental one. Being contacted by that same painful feeling, he harbors no aversion towards it. Since he harbors no aversion towards painful feeling, the underlying tendency to aversion towards painful feeling does not lie behind this. Being contacted by painful feeling, he does not seek delight in sensual pleasure. For what reason? Because the learned noble disciple knows of an escape from painful feeling other than sensual pleasure. Since he does not seek delight in sensual pleasure, the underlying tendency to lust for pleasant feeling does not lie behind this. He understands as it really is the origin and the passing away, the gratification, danger and escape in the case of these feelings. Since he understands these things, the underlying tendency to ignorance in regard to neither painful nor pleasant feeling does not lie behind this. If he feels a pleasant feeling, he feels it detached. If he feels a painful feeling, he feels it detached. If he feels a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, he feels it detached. This monk is called a noble disciple who is detached from birth, aging and death, who is detached from sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair, who is detached from suffering, I say. This monk is the distinction, the disparity, the difference between the learned noble disciple and the unlearned or ordinary worldling. The wise one, learned, does not feel the pleasant and painful mental feeling. This is the great difference between the wise one and the worldling. For the learned one who has comprehended the Dhamma, who clearly sees this world and the next, desirable things do not provoke his mind. Towards the undesired he has no aversion. For him, attraction and repulsion no more exist. Both have been extinguished, brought to an end. Having known the dust-free, sorrowless state, the transcender of existence rightly understands. That's the end of the sutta. So here the Buddha says that the difference between an ordinary worldling and Aryan disciple is that the ordinary worldling is struck by two darts. One is the body pain, the other one is the mental pain. Whereas the Aryan disciple is only struck by one dart, bodily suffering. So why? Because the Aryan disciple, he understands the Dhamma. He understands that everything arises from causes and conditions. And because they arise from past causes and conditions, there's nothing much you can do about it. We can only plan for the future. We can only do something now to affect the future. We cannot change what is happening now, because what is happening now is karma vipaka, mainly. Causes and conditions from the past has been set in motion, so that whatever causes, conditions that we generated in the past are now the results coming to us. So because we understand this, then whatever comes our way, we accept it. We accept it that this is our fate. So that being the case, when we suffer, we don't have mental suffering because we don't think so much about it. For ordinary people, when suffering comes, they cannot accept it, you see, because they don't understand. Because they don't understand, they cannot accept things. So then they have bodily suffering plus the mental suffering. The mental suffering is made by themselves because of proliferation of thoughts, because of not understanding the Dhamma, and because their mind is not cultivated to be strong. So there's a difference between an ordinary person and a learned noble disciple. So a noble disciple, if he feels a pleasant feeling or so, he feels it detached. He makes himself detached from it because he understands if he attaches to it, it will be a source of suffering in future. So when he feels a painful feeling or so, he feels it detached. It's not that he does not have the pain. He has the body pain, but he does not multiply the pain by thinking about it and getting mental pain as well. So when there is a neutral feeling, also he understands. So that's the end of the sutta.